The light of the newborn star painted the hegemony fleet in shades of gold and amber as Admiral Korath stood on his bridge, finally understanding the magnitude of humanity's technological evolution. The gas giant that had orbited peacefully for billions of years now blazed with nuclear fire, transformed into a stellar body by human engineering that operated on scales beyond galactic civilization's comprehension. "Admiral," his science officer reported in a voice hollow with shock, "preliminary analysis confirms the humans achieved controlled stellar ignition using quantum field manipulation across 4 billion kilometers of space. The energy requirements for such an operation exceed the total power output of our entire home system." Korath's mandibles moved soundlessly as he processed information that rendered 3 centuries of hegemony military doctrine obsolete. His fleet commanded enough firepower to sterilize worlds, but the humans had just demonstrated the ability to create new stars. The technological gap wasn't measurable in years or decades. It was measured in fundamental understanding of cosmic forces. "Communications," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of a civilization's first encounter with a superior species. "Open a channel to Captain Chen." When the human commander's image appeared on his screen, Korath saw something in her eyes that he had never expected from a member of a supposedly primitive species: compassion mixed with absolute confidence. She understood his position and felt sympathy for it, even while demonstrating that resistance was futile. "Captain Chen," he began, struggling to find words appropriate for a moment that would reshape galactic politics. "The hegemony acknowledges. We acknowledge that we have gravely misjudged human capabilities." "Admiral," Chen replied, her tone carrying no triumphalism, despite having just demonstrated godlike technological power. "What you've witnessed today represents humanity's defensive philosophy. We don't seek conquest or domination. We simply refuse to be conquered or dominated." She gestured toward the tactical display that showed the new star burning steadily in the system's outer reaches. "The stellar ignition protocol exists for one purpose: to demonstrate that attacking Earth carries consequences beyond any possible gain. We can defend our homeworld by reshaping entire solar systems." On the human ship, Dr. Yamamoto monitored the quantum field generators as they gradually powered down from stellar manipulation mode. "Captain, the exotic matter reserves have stabilized. We could maintain this level of operation indefinitely, or escalate to full stellar engineering protocols if necessary." Chen nodded, but her attention remained focused on Admiral Korath. She could see the alien commander grappling with implications that extended far beyond this single encounter. The hegemony had built their empire on technological superiority and overwhelming force, but they had just discovered that somewhere in the galaxy, a species had moved beyond such limitations entirely. "Admiral Korath," she continued, "humanity offers the hegemony 3 choices. First, immediate withdrawal from Earth space and recognition of human sovereignty. Second, peaceful contact and technological exchange under terms of mutual respect. Third, continued aggression and a demonstration of our full stellar engineering capabilities." The threat hung in space like the light of the artificial star: beautiful, terrible, and absolutely convincing. Korath understood that the humans weren't bluffing. They had just ignited a gas giant as casually as his ships might fire a warning shot. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, If the hegemony chooses the second option, what would you require?" Chen consulted with her senior staff through silent communication links before responding. "Admiral, humanity has no interest in destroying the hegemony or conquering your territories. However, your empire's practice of forced subjugation must end. Any species capable of stellar engineering has no need for slaves or tributary worlds." Chief Engineer Murphy's voice added weight to her words through the open channel. "Aye, Admiral. We've learned to extract unlimited energy from vacuum fluctuations and create matter from pure thought. Why would we need to steal resources from other species when we can manufacture whatever we require from the quantum foam itself?" Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez looked up from his tactical station. "Captain, long-range sensors detect several hegemony ships on the fleet periphery powering down their weapon systems. It appears word of our demonstration is spreading through their formation. Indeed, across the alien fleet, ship commanders were making independent decisions based on evidence that couldn't be argued with or explained away. Crews that had spent their careers conquering inferior civilizations now faced the reality that they were the inferior ones. Weapons that could destroy planets meant nothing against an enemy that could create new stars. Admiral, Chen continued, the universe is vast enough for multiple spacefaring civilizations to coexist peacefully. Humanity proposes a new model for galactic relations, cooperation based on mutual benefit, rather than dominance through superior force. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in. The technologies you've witnessed today represent only a fraction of human capabilities. We have learned to manipulate quantum fields, exotic matter, dimensional topology, and stellar mechanics. But our greatest achievement isn't technological, it's philosophical. Dr. Yamamoto elaborated from her science station. We have transcended the need for conflict through scarcity. When you can create matter and energy at will, territorial disputes become meaningless. When you can reshape solar systems, resource competition becomes obsolete. Admiral Korath found himself nodding despite his shock. The human perspective made logical sense from their position of technological supremacy, but it would require fundamental changes to hegemony society that had been built on conquest and expansion. Captain Chen, he said finally, such changes would require approval from the Hegemony High Council. However, I can speak for my fleet when I say that we recognize human sovereignty over this system. That's a wise beginning, Admiral, Chen acknowledged. The Prometheus will remain on patrol in this system, while your government considers its options. We suggest they consider carefully. The alternative to peaceful coexistence is conflict with a species that has mastered cosmic engineering. As if to emphasize her point, the newborn star pulsed with renewed brightness, its nuclear fires visible to every ship in the fleet. The message was clear. Humanity had moved beyond conventional warfare into realms where conflict was decided by ability to reshape reality itself. All hegemony vessels, Chen announced to the entire fleet. You are free to withdraw from Earth space. However, remember what you have witnessed here today. Spread word throughout your empire that humanity seeks peaceful relations with all species, willing to abandon the philosophy of conquest. One by one, the massive alien warships began turning away from Earth, their crews still struggling to comprehend an encounter that had redefined their understanding of what was possible in the universe. Admiral Korath's fleet, which had arrived expecting easy conquest, departed carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. As the last hegemony ship disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Captain Chen stood on her bridge surrounded by technologies that had elevated humanity to cosmic gardeners. The Prometheus continued its patrol, a guardian angel armed with the power of stars themselves, watching over Earth and demonstrating to the galaxy that the age of human space had begun. The universe would never be the same. Admiral Korath stared at the chronometer on his bridge display as precious seconds ticked away. 2 minutes and 30 seconds until the human deadline expired. Around him, his command staff waited for orders that would determine the fate of not just their fleet, but potentially the entire hegemony. Admiral, his chief tactical officer ventured carefully, the humans have demonstrated capabilities beyond our current understanding of physics. Perhaps strategic withdrawal would be advisable. Withdrawal? Korath's voice carried dangerous undertones. The hegemony does not retreat from inferior species. We have ruled this galaxy for 3 centuries. We do not bow to upstart primitives regardless of their apparent technological advantages. But even as he spoke the words, doubt gnawed at his certainty. The Prometheus floated in the center of his formation like a predator surrounded by prey, its exotic energies painting impossible pictures on every sensor array in his fleet. The humans had casually demonstrated the ability to create matter from nothing, manipulate gravity as a weapon, and teleport across combat distances. What else were they capable of? On the human ship, Captain Chen monitored the alien fleet's indecision with professional detachment. She understood Korath's position. No military commander wanted to be the first in their civilization's history to retreat from a single enemy vessel. Pride and duty were powerful motivators, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. Captain, Dr. Yamamoto reported, I'm detecting quantum resonance patterns from several hegemony ships. They're attempting to analyze our field emissions, possibly looking for weaknesses or ways to replicate our technologies. Chen smiled grimly. Let them look. What they're seeing represents 50 years of human theoretical research combined with practical engineering that required the combined industrial output of our entire planet. Even if they understood the principles, which they don't, they lack the infrastructure to implement any of it. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez looked up from his tactical station. 90 seconds remaining, Captain. Several ships on the fleet periphery appeared to be charging their engines for possible withdrawal. But the flagship and core battle group are holding position. They're caught between logical tactical assessment and institutional pride, Chen observed. Admiral Korath knows his fleet can't win, but admitting that means acknowledging that the hegemony is no longer the dominant military power in this region of space. Chief Engineer Murphy's voice crackled over the communication system. Captain, the lads down here are getting anxious. We've got enough exotic matter charged to demonstrate the planet killer protocols if necessary. But once we cross that line, boy, and I understand, Murphy, Chen replied. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. However, if Admiral Korath chooses to test human resolve, the galaxy needs to understand exactly what they're dealing with. 45 seconds remaining. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Korath wrestled with a decision that would define his legacy and possibly determine the future of hegemony expansion. His tactical computers had run every possible simulation, and all of them ended the same way: complete destruction of his fleet by technologies that operated beyond the boundaries of conventional physics. Admiral, his communications officer reported. Captain Veltar of the Shadow Strike requests permission to withdraw his squadron. His crew is experiencing psychological difficulties processing the human ship's quantum signature. Denied, Korath snapped, then immediately reconsidered. Crew morale was collapsing across his fleet as beings who had never faced defeat struggled to comprehend an enemy that could rewrite the laws of physics at will. Perhaps a tactical withdrawal wasn't defeat. It was intelligence gathering. 20 seconds. All ships, he commanded. Prepare for strategic withdrawal. Set course for the outer system perimeter. But even as he gave the order, part of him rebelled against the decision. The hegemony had never retreated. They were the conquerors, the apex predators of galactic civilization. To flee before a single ship, regardless of its capabilities, would send shockwaves throughout their empire. Belay that order, he countermanded. All ships maintain position. Charge all weapon systems. 10 seconds. On the Prometheus, Captain Chen watched the hegemony fleet's confusion with something approaching sympathy. She had hoped Korath would choose wisdom over pride, but she had prepared for this possibility. Dr. Yamamoto, she said quietly, initiate the stellar manipulation protocols. Target the system's outer gas giant. 5 seconds. Aye, Captain, Dr. Yamamoto replied, her hands moving across controls that would demonstrate humanity's ultimate technological achievement. Quantum field generators are aligning for stellar-scale manipulation. 0. Admiral Korath, Chen's voice cut across all frequencies as the deadline expired. You have chosen to test human resolve. What you are about to witness is not a weapon designed for ship-to-ship combat. This is humanity's answer to species that threaten our existence. The Prometheus began to emit energy patterns that registered on sensors as something approaching the output of a small star. But instead of radiating in all directions, the power was focused, concentrated, aimed at something far beyond the immediate battlefield. Initiating quantum tunnel to stellar target, Dr. Yamamoto announced with scientific calm that belied the magnitude of what was happening. Field coherence established across 4 billion kilometers. We have achieved stable connection to the target gas giant's core. What happened next shattered every assumption about the limitations of technology. The Prometheus reached across the vast distance of interplanetary space and touched the heart of the system's largest gas giant. Through manipulation of quantum entanglement and exotic matter conduits, the human ship began to alter the fundamental nuclear processes occurring within the planet's core. The gas giant, a massive world larger than Jupiter, began to change. Deep within its hydrogen-helium atmosphere, fusion reactions that had remained stable for billions of years suddenly accelerated. The planet's core temperature spiked as human technology forced nuclear processes to occur at unprecedented rates. By the void, Admiral Korath whispered, watching his long-range sensors track the impossible. They're turning the gas giant into a star. Stellar ignition achieved, Dr. Yamamoto reported matter-of-factly. The gas giant has undergone controlled transformation into a small stellar body. Fusion reactions are now self-sustaining. Where a planet had existed moments before, a new star blazed to life. The transformation sent shockwaves through the system as Gravitational fields shifted and electromagnetic radiation flooded space with energies that would be visible from neighboring star systems. Captain Chen opened a channel to the stunned hegemony fleet. Admiral Korath, you have just witnessed humanity's ultimate defensive capability. We can reach across interplanetary distances and ignite gas giants as stellar bodies. We can create new stars or extinguish existing ones. We have become gardeners of the cosmic scale. The implications hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. If humans could ignite gas giants, they could certainly extinguish the stars that powered hegemony worlds. They could reshape entire solar systems as weapons, turning planets into stellar furnaces or collapsing stars into black holes. The Prometheus, Chen continued, carries the power to restructure reality itself at the stellar scale. We can create or destroy worlds, ignite or extinguish suns, and manipulate gravity across light years of space. This is what humanity has achieved while you assumed we were primitive. The new star continued to burn, its light reaching across the system as a permanent testament to human technological supremacy. The hegemony fleet, designed to conquer planets and subjugate species, found themselves facing an enemy that could literally create and destroy solar systems. Admiral Korath finally understood that his 3-century-old empire had encountered something beyond their ability to comprehend, much less defeat. The age of hegemony dominance was ending, not through conquest or rebellion, but through the emergence of a species that had transcended the very concept of conventional warfare. Admiral Korath's tactical display painted a picture of complete disaster. His fleet, which had conquered 47 species across 12 sectors, was being systematically dismantled by a single human vessel that operated beyond their understanding of possible technology. Admiral, his communications officer reported with barely controlled panic. Captain Vextar of the destroyer Void Crusher reports total structural failure. The human somehow turned 60% of his ship's hull into hydrogen gas. He's evacuating his crew to the escort frigates. And the Iron Fang? Korath demanded, referring to his second-largest battleship. Captain Mordak reports that her weapon systems won't lock onto the human ship. Their sensors show it simultaneously existing in 12 different locations across the battlefield. Their targeting computers have crashed trying to process impossible data. Korath's mandibles clicked in frustration. The humans had demonstrated abilities that violated every principle of warfare the hegemony understood. Teleportation, gravity manipulation, matter conversion. These weren't just advanced technologies. They were fundamental alterations to how combat could be conducted. On the Prometheus, Dr. Yamamoto monitored the increasing chaos among the alien fleet with scientific fascination. Captain, their formation is beginning to collapse. Several ships are attempting to withdraw, but they're confusing their own escape vectors by trying to avoid our quantum signature. They're learning that conventional tactics don't apply when your enemy can rewrite physics, Chen observed. Murphy, what's our status on the exotic matter reserves? Chief Engineer Murphy's voice carried satisfaction mixed with professional pride. Aye, Captain. We're operating at only 30% of maximum capacity. The matter conversion demonstrations barely touched our reserves, and the quantum tunneling system is more efficient than our best projections. We could maintain this level of operation for weeks. Chen nodded, then opened a channel to the entire hegemony fleet. When her image appeared on screens across 200 ships, she could see the impact of her vessel's demonstration on alien crews that had never faced defeat. Admiral Korath, commanders of the hegemony fleet, she began, her voice carrying across space to beings who were rapidly discovering that their technological superiority was an illusion. You came to Earth expecting to find a primitive species ripe for conquest. Instead, you've encountered something your military doctrine never prepared you for. She gestured to her tactical display, which showed the hegemony formation in growing disarray. What you've witnessed today represents approximately 8% of the Prometheus's combat capabilities. We have demonstrated defensive systems, precision weapons, matter manipulation, and tactical mobility. These are our basic operational technologies. On his bridge, Korath watched his fleet's morale crumble as reports flooded in from ships whose crews were demanding explanations for phenomena that had no explanations within their scientific framework. However, Chen continued, humanity didn't build the Prometheus just to demonstrate technological superiority. We built her to deliver a message to any species that might threaten our homeworld. Dr. Yamamoto's hands moved across her controls, and new energy patterns began building within the human ship. These readings were different from anything the hegemony had detected before. Deeper, more fundamental, touching forces that existed at the very foundation of reality itself. The message is simple, Chen said. Humanity has moved beyond conventional warfare. We have learned to manipulate the quantum foam that underlies spacetime itself. We can reach into the basic structure of the universe and reshape it according to our will. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez looked up from his station with barely contained excitement. Captain, the zero-point energy extractors are online. We have successfully tapped into the vacuum fluctuations of space itself. Power levels are, well, they're theoretically unlimited, Chen smiled. Thank you, Rodriguez. Admiral Korath, what you're about to witness is humanity's ultimate achievement in military engineering. We call it the Genesis field, the ability to create and destroy matter at the most fundamental level using the infinite energy potential that exists in empty space itself. Space around the Prometheus began to change in ways that hurt to perceive. Reality itself seemed to become fluid, malleable, responsive to the will of the human ship's quantum processors. The fabric of the universe bent and twisted like clay in the hands of a cosmic sculptor. Initiating controlled matter genesis, Dr. Yamamoto announced with scientific calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos erupting across the hegemony fleet. Creating demonstration asteroids from pure vacuum energy. And then, in the empty space between the human ship and the alien fleet, something impossible happened. Matter began to exist where none had existed before. Not transported, not converted, not manipulated, created from the quantum potential of vacuum itself. A dozen asteroids, each the size of a city block, condensed out of nothingness. They formed with perfect precision, their composition and structure determined entirely by the Prometheus's quantum computers. Iron, nickel, rare metals, complex crystals, all assembled atom by atom from the infinite energy that existed in every cubic centimeter of seemingly empty space. Matter creation, Chen explained to the stunned silence that had fallen over the alien fleet. We have learned to reach into the zero-point field that underlies all reality and extract whatever materials we require. The universe itself becomes our manufacturing base. One of Korath's officers collapsed at his station, overwhelming stress and disbelief triggering a neural cascade that left him unconscious. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out as alien minds struggled to process technologies that redefined what was possible. But creation is only half of the equation. Chen continued relentlessly. Dr. Yamamoto, demonstrate matter annihilation. The asteroids that had formed from nothingness began to dissolve back into the quantum foam from which they had emerged. But this wasn't simple destruction. It was controlled conversion of matter back into pure energy, which the Prometheus immediately absorbed and added to its already impossible power reserves. Complete matter-energy conversion with 100% efficiency, Dr. Yamamoto reported. We have achieved perfect recycling at the atomic level. Nothing is ever truly lost or wasted when you can manipulate the fundamental quantum structure of reality. Admiral Korath finally found his voice, though it emerged as a strangled whisper. You can create and destroy matter at will. You draw unlimited power from empty space. You manipulate gravity, time, and space itself as weapons. That's correct, Chen confirmed. And this brings us to the real purpose of this demonstration. The Prometheus wasn't built to conquer other species. She was built to protect humanity from species like yours. The human ship began to emit new energy patterns. These ones focused not on demonstration, but on something far more ominous. Every sensor in the hegemony fleet registered power buildups that exceeded their ability to measure or comprehend. Admiral Korath, Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You have 3 minutes to begin withdrawing your fleet from Earth space. If you choose to remain, the next demonstration will not be limited to empty space and uninhabited asteroids. The threat hung in space between the human ship and the alien armada, like a quantum sword of Damocles, powered by forces that could reshape reality itself. For the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, the hegemony faced an enemy that didn't just outgun them. It existed on an entirely different level of technological evolution. The countdown had begun. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion erupted in chaos as Admiral Korath watched his fleet's most devastating weapons fail completely against the human vessel. Alarms shrieked across the ship as sensor arrays overloaded, trying to process energy readings that exceeded their maximum parameters. "Report," Korath roared, his voice cutting through the cacophony of panicked communications from his fleet. "Admiral, our weapons had no effect," his tactical officer reported, mandibles chattering with fear. "The human ship absorbed our entire bombardment and somehow converted it into additional power for their defensive systems." "Impossible," Korath snarled. But even as he spoke, he watched the Prometheus continue its inexorable advance through his fleet formation. The space around the human ship rippled like water, creating distortions that made targeting impossible. On the Prometheus, Captain Chen monitored her ship's systems with the calm precision of someone who understood exactly what her vessel was capable of. The alien bombardment had done more than fail to damage her ship. It had actually strengthened their defensive matrix. "Dr. Yamamoto," she said, "initialize the gravity lance system. Let's give our visitors a demonstration of applied gravitational mechanics." Dr. Yamamoto's fingers moved across her controls with practiced efficiency. "Gravity lance charging, Captain." Targeting the lead destroyer squadron. Field convergence in 30 seconds. The hegemony had built their empire on the principle of overwhelming firepower. Their ships were massive constructions designed to deliver devastating attacks while absorbing tremendous punishment. What they had never encountered was an enemy that could manipulate fundamental forces of nature as weapons. Warning shot first, Chen decided. Target the space directly in front of their formation. Let's show them what controlled gravity manipulation can accomplish. The Prometheus aligned itself with mathematical precision, and then something unprecedented happened. Space itself began to bend in a focused beam extending from the human ship. Not light, not particles, not plasma. Pure gravitational force concentrated and directed like a spear thrust. Where the gravity lance touched empty space, reality compressed. Stars in the background became distorted as their light bent around the gravitational anomaly. And then, at the focal point of the beam, space-time itself began to tear. A micro-singularity formed in the vacuum ahead of the hegemony fleet. For 3 seconds it existed as a point of infinite density, smaller than an atom but containing enough gravitational force to drag nearby asteroids out of their orbits. Then Chen's crew collapsed the field, allowing the singularity to evaporate in a burst of Hawking radiation that registered on every sensor array for light years in every direction. The hegemony fleet froze. 200 warships, each crewed by beings who had spent their lives conquering the galaxy, simply stopped moving as their commanders tried to process what they had just witnessed. "Admiral Korath," Chen's voice cut through the stunned silence. "That was a demonstration shot. As you can see, humanity has learned to weaponize gravity itself. The singularity you just observed was generated and controlled entirely by my ship's systems." On his bridge, Korath struggled to maintain his composure. 3 centuries of military experience told him that what he had just seen was impossible. Gravity manipulation on that scale required technology beyond anything in hegemony databases. Yet the evidence floated before him in the form of radiation readings that would take hours to fade. "You claim to control gravity," he managed, trying to keep his voice steady. "Even if true, you still face 200 ships. One vessel cannot defeat an entire fleet." Chen's expression remained calm, almost sympathetic. "Admiral, you're thinking conventionally. Numbers become irrelevant when you can manipulate the fundamental forces that hold the universe together. Allow me to demonstrate." She nodded to Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, who had been waiting with obvious anticipation. "Rodriguez, activate the quantum displacement field. Let's show them how human ships move in combat." What happened next shattered every assumption the hegemony had about space warfare. The Prometheus didn't accelerate or maneuver in any conventional sense. Instead, it simply ceased to exist in one location and simultaneously appeared in another. Having crossed 15,000 kilometers of space without traversing the distance between, quantum tunneling on a macroscopic scale. The human ship had literally stepped through the barriers of space-time itself, appearing directly in the center of the hegemony formation before their sensors could track the movement. "Teleportation," Dr. Yamamoto explained cheerfully over the open channel, as if discussing the weather. "We've learned to fold space around our vessel, allowing instantaneous travel across combat distances. Quite useful for tactical positioning." The Prometheus now floated in the middle of Korath's carefully planned formation, surrounded by alien warships whose weapons were useless at such close range. They would risk destroying their own vessels in the crossfire. But the real innovation, Chen continued, isn't just movement. It's what we can do once we arrive. She gestured to Chief Engineer Murphy, whose voice boomed with Irish enthusiasm over the ship's communication system. Aye, Captain. Initiating the mass conversion beam. Time to show these visitors why we called her Prometheus. She brings fire from the gods themselves. The human ship began to emit a new type of energy field, one that registered on hegemony sensors as something beyond their scientific understanding. Unlike the gravity lance or the defensive matrix, this field didn't manipulate existing forces. It reached down to the quantum level and began rewriting the basic structure of matter itself. The nearest hegemony destroyer, a massive vessel armed with enough firepower to level a continent, simply began to change its hull armor, forged from exotic alloys and designed to withstand antimatter explosions, started converting to hydrogen at the molecular level. The process was precise, controlled, and absolutely terrifying. The alien crew had time to realize what was happening, but no ability to stop it. Their weapons, their armor, their life support systems, all beginning the inexorable transformation from complex matter to the simplest element in the universe. By the void, Korath whispered, watching one of his most powerful ships become structurally compromised as its hull literally evaporated. They can transmute matter itself. Correct, Chen confirmed. The mass conversion beam operates by manipulating strong nuclear forces at the quantum level. We can transform any matter into any other form of matter, given sufficient power. And as you've observed, power is not something the Prometheus lacks. The partially converted destroyer limped away from the formation, its captain desperately trying to get his remaining crew to escape pods before the ship's structural integrity failed completely, Admiral. Korath found himself facing a tactical situation that had no precedent in hegemony military history. The human ship could teleport anywhere on the battlefield, manipulate gravity as a weapon, and literally unmake his vessels at the molecular level. Every assumption about space combat had just become obsolete. Admiral, Chen said, her voice carrying a note of finality. You now understand why humanity built only one ship of this class. The Prometheus represents our entire defensive doctrine for a very simple reason. We only need one. Around the human vessel, space continued to ripple with barely contained energies that spoke of even greater capabilities held in reserve. The message was clear. What they had witnessed so far was merely a preview of human technological capabilities. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the hegemony fleet arrange itself for attack. Around her, the bridge hummed with barely contained energy, systems operating at levels that would have been considered science fiction just decades earlier. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez called from the tactical station. All primary systems are online. The quantum cascade generators are at full power. Chen nodded, her gaze never leaving the main display. 200 alien warships spread across space like a metallic storm cloud, each one bristling with weapons designed to obliterate worlds. Any conventional fleet would have been vaporized within minutes of encountering such overwhelming firepower. But the Prometheus was far from conventional. Dr. Yamamoto, Chen addressed the chief science officer, a woman whose brilliant mind had helped birth the technologies that made this ship possible. Status on the dimensional resonance field? Stable and ready for deployment, Captain, Dr. Yamamoto replied, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed energy patterns beyond the comprehension of most galactic civilizations. The field generators are operating within optimal parameters. We have full dimensional lock. Chief Engineer Murphy's voice crackled over the comm system from deep within the ship's core. Captain, the matter conversion reactors are singing like angels. We've got enough power to run half the Earth's electrical grid for a year, and that's just our baseline output. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Prometheus represented humanity's greatest technological achievement, a fusion of theoretical physics and practical engineering that had taken the combined efforts of Earth's brightest minds to create. When the first hegemony scout ships had arrived 5 years ago, they had dismissed humans as a primitive species barely capable of interplanetary travel. They had made a critical error in that assessment. Communications, Chen ordered. Put me through to Admiral Korath again. The view screen flickered, revealing the alien commander's increasingly agitated features. His confidence from moments earlier had visibly diminished, replaced by something Chen recognized as the beginning of genuine concern. "Admiral," she said, her tone remaining professionally courteous, "this is your final opportunity to withdraw from Earth space. What you're about to witness will fundamentally change your understanding of what's possible in naval warfare." Korath's mandibles clicked aggressively. "Human arrogance will not save you from the might of the hegemony. You face 200 warships with weapons that have reduced entire star systems to ash. Your single vessel, regardless of its unusual energy signatures, cannot possibly withstand our combined firepower." "You're absolutely correct about one thing," Chen acknowledged. "A conventional vessel couldn't survive what you're about to unleash. Fortunately, the Prometheus operates on principles that your species hasn't yet discovered." She gestured to Dr. Yamamoto, who began activating systems that had never been tested in actual combat conditions. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as enormous amounts of power flowed to the ship's most exotic systems. "Admiral, your ships operate on the principle of matter, antimatter annihilation for power generation, particle beam and plasma projection for weapons, and conventional mass displacement for propulsion. These are adequate technologies for conquering species operating at similar technological levels." On the tactical display, the hegemony ships completed their encirclement. Energy readings spiked as hundreds of weapon systems charged for simultaneous firing. "However," Chen continued, "human engineering has moved beyond such limitations. What you're about to witness is the practical application of quantum field manipulation, dimensional mechanics, and controlled singularity generation." Korath's eyes widened. "Impossible. Such technologies are theoretical impossibilities. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of a star." "Admiral," Dr. Yamamoto interjected, "may I introduce you to the Einstein-Chen Unified Field Generator?" Her hands moved across her controls and space around the Prometheus began to visibly distort. "It doesn't require the output of a star. It creates the equivalent energy density of a stellar core in a controlled quantum cascade." The effect was immediate and terrifying. Reality warped around the human ship like a lens made of space itself. Light bent at impossible angles, creating visual phenomena that hurt alien eyes to perceive. The fabric of space-time rippled outward from the Prometheus in waves that registered on every sensor in the hegemony fleet. "Energy levels are climbing beyond our instrument's ability to measure," Rodriguez reported calmly. "Dimensional field integrity at 100%. We have achieved stable space-time manipulation." Through the view screen, Chen could see panic beginning to spread across Korath's bridge, as his officers reported readings that defied their understanding of physics. She almost felt sympathy for them. Humanity had spent decades grappling with these same impossibilities before learning to harness them. "All hegemony vessels," Chen broadcasted to the entire fleet, "you now face a choice. Withdraw from this system immediately, or discover firsthand why humanity chose to build only one warship of this class." Her words carried across space to 200 alien crews who had never encountered defeat, never faced technology beyond their comprehension, never looked into the abyss of human ingenuity unleashed for war. "The Prometheus," she continued, "represents humanity's answer to galactic aggression. We built her not as a weapon of conquest, but as a guardian. Today you will learn the difference." Admiral Korath's image flickered as electromagnetic distortions from the human ship interfered with communications. When the signal stabilized, his expression showed the dawning realization that his fleet might have encountered something beyond their ability to defeat. "Fire," he commanded desperately. "All ships, fire everything." 200 warships unleashed hell itself. Particle beams that could slice through mountains, plasma bursts hot enough to melt steel in microseconds, and antimatter torpedoes capable of vaporizing city blocks converged on the Prometheus. The combined firepower could have sterilized a planet's surface in minutes. None of it reached the human ship. The quantum field surrounding the Prometheus absorbed, deflected, or simply translated the incoming attacks into harmless energy states. Weapons that should have destroyed the vessel instead fed power back into its generators, making the dimensional distortions even stronger. "Admiral Korath," Chen's voice cut through the chaos on the Hegemony flagship, "you've just learned lesson 1 in human defensive technology. Now let us demonstrate what we've developed for offensive operations." The Prometheus began to accelerate, not through conventional propulsion, but by manipulating the very space around it. The ship moved toward the center of the hegemony formation like a predator approaching cornered prey, reality bending to accommodate its passage. Admiral Korath's 6 eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display aboard his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. For 300 cycles, the hegemony had ruled this sector of space with an iron fist, their vast armadas crushing any species foolish enough to resist. Today should have been another routine subjugation of a primitive world called Earth. Admiral, his tactical officer clicked nervously, mandibles chattering. The human vessel has not responded to our ultimatum. It continues to approach our formation. Korath's chitinous plates shifted in what passed for amusement among his kind. 1 ship. The humans had sent a single vessel against his fleet of 200 warships. Either they were incredibly brave or impossibly stupid. Given their recent entry into galactic civilization, he suspected the latter. "Show me this." "Defiant craft," he commanded. The main viewer shifted, revealing a sleek vessel unlike anything in the hegemony databases, where their ships were massive, blocky constructions bristling with armor and weapons. This human ship appeared almost elegant. Its hull gleamed with an unusual metallic finish that seemed to absorb and reflect light in ways that hurt to look at directly. "Analysis?" Korath demanded. "Length approximately 1,200 meters, his science officer reported, voice trembling slightly. "Mass readings are inconsistent. Our sensors detect heavy elements that shouldn't exist in that configuration. The power signature is unlike anything we've encountered." Korath's confidence wavered slightly. The hegemony had conquered 47 species across 12 sectors. They knew every type of ship design, every weapon system, every defensive measure. This human vessel defied their understanding. "No matter," he growled, reasserting his authority. "Open a channel to the human ship. Let them hear the voice of their conqueror before they die." The communication array crackled to life and a human face appeared on screen. The creature looked remarkably similar to the Viridian species they'd enslaved decades ago, but there was something different in its eyes. Where the Viridians had shown fear, this human displayed only calm determination. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Prometheus," the human said, her voice steady despite facing overwhelming odds. "You have entered Earth's sovereign space with hostile intent. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Korath's mandibles clicked in laughter, the sound echoing through his bridge. His officers joined in, creating a cacophony of alien amusement. 200 ships against 1, and the human spoke of consequences. "Human," Korath began, his voice dripping with condescension. "I am Admiral Korath of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet. Your species has been chosen for integration into our empire. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. Resist and we will make your world burn for 1,000 cycles." Captain Chen's expression never changed. "Admiral Korath, you've made a critical error in judgment. You assume that because you outnumber us, you hold the advantage. Allow me to educate you on human engineering." The transmission cut, leaving Korath staring at a blank screen. For a moment, uncertainty crept into his thoughts. No species had ever spoken to him with such confidence while facing annihilation. Perhaps these humans possessed some unknown defensive technology. "All ships," he commanded, "assume attack formation Beta 7. Prepare to demonstrate hegemony superiority." 200 warships began their deadly dance, moving into an envelopment pattern that had crushed countless civilizations. Each vessel in the formation carried enough firepower to level a continent. Their combined might capable of cracking a planet's crust. The human ship, the Prometheus, held its position at the edge of the system, dwarfed by the approaching armada like a single star facing a galaxy. Yet something about its stillness suggested coiled power, like a predator preparing to strike. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, voice tight with confusion, "I'm reading massive energy buildups from the human vessel. The power levels they're impossible. Our instruments must be malfunctioning." "Recalibrate and report again," Korath ordered, but deep in his mind, doubt began to take root. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts. And right now, every instinct screamed that something was wrong. The Prometheus began to move, not retreating as any sane commander would, but advancing directly toward the center of the hegemony formation. Its acceleration was smooth, almost casual, as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions rather than absolute constraints. "Energy readings are increasing exponentially," the sensor officer reported, his voice climbing toward panic. "Admiral, these numbers, They're beyond our understanding of possible power generation. Korath watched the human ship approach, a growing dread replacing his earlier confidence. The vessel moved with purpose, its trajectory calculated with precision that suggested advanced tactical systems far beyond what their intelligence reports indicated humans possessed. "All ships," he commanded, his voice maintaining authority despite his growing unease. "Prepare to fire on my command. Target the human vessel's engine section." But as the Prometheus drew closer, something impossible happened. The space around the human ship began to shift. Reality itself seemed to bend and warp, creating visual distortions that made Korath's eyes water. The fabric of space-time rippled like water, and for the first time in his long military career, Admiral Korath felt true fear. The humans hadn't sent one ship to face his armada out of desperation or ignorance. They had sent it because one ship was all they needed. And as the Prometheus continued its approach, growing energy readings painting impossible pictures on every sensor array in the fleet, Korath began to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The hegemony had ruled through superior technology and overwhelming force for 3 centuries. They had never encountered a species that could challenge their dominance. But as the human warship drew within weapons range, its hull beginning to emit an ethereal glow that hurt to perceive directly, Admiral Korath realized that their reign of terror was about to face its first real test. The Prometheus had come to deliver a message written in physics and engineering that the galaxy had never seen. The age of human warfare was about to begin,